Hey, good evening. Hope you're all doing well. Today we are learning Maseches Horiyos Daf Yud Beis Amud Beis and Yud Gimel Amud Aleph and Mirz Hashem. Really quite a big blot, so we have a lot of ground to cover. And tomorrow Mirz Hashem will be Masayim and Masechta. We are starting about 15 lines or so from the bottom with the words Amar Lahu Reb Mesharshia Lebrei. I'll give you a moment to find it there. First words on the line should be Karti Vasilki. I'm not exactly sure how it pans out for you guys. So this is what the Gemara says. Gemara says, Amar Lahu Rav Mesharshia Lebrei. He says to his son, Ki ba'isu me'al umigmarei kame rabaichu. When you want to go and learn from your rabbeim, you should prepare. Don't walk in empty-handed. Garsu masnisa ve'alu lekame rabaichu. Learn Mishnayos first. This is like our Mishnah, right? You should be makdim Mishnayos before you go learn Gemara. You should be holding cup. V'chiyasvisu kame. And when you're sitting in front of your Rebbe, you should do something else. Chazu lepume. Look at his mouth when he's talking. So that you are able to fulfill the pasuk, the dictum of seeing your Rebbe as he is teaching. Garsisu, when you are learning, Garsu al Nahara Demaya. You should make sure that you are on a riverbank of flowing water. Just like the water is flowing in a river, so too Mashchan Shmait Saihu. It should also be the case that your learning should flow. And that's also by Gichon, same thing, that the Malchus says. We're going to see another thing about that right now. Yeah, that's correct. We'll see something about that in another line. Very good. Someone was listening. So then the Gemara says, V'sivu akilkele de matamachasya. It's better to stand by the garbage heaps of matamachasya, v'lo sevu apadne de pumpadisa, and not to be by the mansions of pumpadisa. This is a broader idea of learning Torah al pi hadchak. It's better to learn Torah under difficult circumstances than under idyllic utopian circumstances. We're not going to dig into this now. Let's continue. Tav galdanasarya. It's better to eat fish that's right about to spoil of demata mechasya. That's better than lemechal mikutcha de ramikipi, than to eat the food of ramikipi. A lot of different perushim of what's going on over here from kutcha. Rama Karni Belokai. The Gemara says that from the famous story of she's talking. So she's saying Rama Karni, my Karen. What is this talking about? Rama Karni, Velon Rama Pachi. There were two ways that a Kohen could have been nimshach. He could have been nimshach with oil from a keren, or he could have been nimshach from a flask. So she said dafka Karni. It should be from a horn. David Shlomo shenimshachu bekeren nimshacha malchusa. Yes, this is a Gemara. Yes, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So the Gemara says that David and Shlomo were nimshachu bekeren. They were anointed with oil from a horn, from a shofar, nimshacha malchusa. Their malchus lasted. Shaul v'Yehu shenimshachu bepach lo nimshachu malchusa. Don't use a flask. If you can be nimshach through a shofar, that's definitely the way to go. We're at the 2 dots, 8 lines from the bottom of the page on Yud Beis Amud Aleph. Mashiach b'Shem and Amishcha, Tanu Rabbanan Mashiach. This is referring to Mashiach, anyone who's anointed. So maybe it's not just the Kohen Gadol who is Nimshach. Maybe it's also a Melech. Yochel Melech, says the Gemara, no, Talmud Lomar Kohen. A Melech is not in the same category as a Kohen. The halachos are different between a Kohen Mashuach and a king. So the king is not relevant to these dinim. Kohen, says the Gemara, if in fact we are only talking about a Kohen, Yachol, maybe it's not just a Kohen who's nimshach with oil, but also maybe Yachol Merubah begadim. Maybe in a time when there was no Shemen HaMishcha. Perhaps we're talking even about a Kohen who only became a Kohen by putting on all 8 garments. Says the Gemara, Talmud Omar Mashiach. No, it has to be with oil. Mashiach. If the Gemara says, fine, if you're talking about oil, maybe Yachol Mashuach Milchama. There was another Kohen who used to go out to war with the Yidden when they went out to war, and he was also Mashuach. Says the Gemara, Talmud Omar Kohen HaMashiach, She'eno Mashiach al Kabab. We need someone who's Nimshach, but no one who's above him in the hierarchy. It has to be the most elevated person who is Nimshach. My mashma. Where do we know that this is true from the language of Hey HaMashiach? Says the Gemara, Kedu Amar Rava HaYerech. From talking about the din of Gid HaNoshe, HaMiyumenes Shebiyerech. We're talking about the most choicest part of the leg, which is talking about the Gid HaNoshe. So to Achanami HaMashiach. The letter Hey teaches us the spitz portion of of Mashiach, the one who's anointed at the highest levels, which is the Kohen Gadol, not the Melech HaMashiach, not the Kohen HaMashiach. Therefore, Amiyuman Shebim Meshuchashim, the choicest among them, which is of course the Kohen Gadol. Let's analyze this brisa. Amar Mar Mashiach Yachol melech. We said that maybe perhaps it's a melech. The Gemara says, what a ridiculous havamina. Melech parhu demaisi. The melech doesn't bring a par. You can't compare the melech to the case of a Kohen Gadol. They bring different korbanos entirely. The melech doesn't bring a par. Seir hu demaisi. So says the Gemara, you're 100% right. They bring different korbanos, but there's a havamina that we had to dispel. What's the havamina? Itzrich. I might have thought I'll shigigas ma'asu yavi sar al helam daber yavi par kamash malan. I might have thought that this melech would only have brought a sa'ir with shigigas ma'asu when he makes an error on his own accord, not for the public. But if he were to then paskin for the tzibur, so then perhaps we would have said he brings a par helam davar shel tzibur. No, he doesn't bring a par helam davar shel tzibur. He brings a seir. So says the Gemara. 3 lines from the bottom on Yud Beis Amud Aleph. Ein bein mashuach b'shem and amishcha b'chulei mas nisin delo ki Reb Meir. Our Mishnah Pashut is not like Reb Meir. Why not? Dei Reb Meir. What does Reb Meir hold? Hatanya. He says merubah begadim maybe par habal kol mitzvos al kol mitzvos devi Reb Meir. Our Mishnah specifically said that the only time Kohen Gadol brings a par is if he's a Kohen HaMashuach B'Shemen. But if he became a Kohen Gadol through Meruba Begadim, he's not on the same level. He doesn't bring the same par. Rav Meir argues with our Mishnah. Rav Meir says that even a Kohen who's only a Kohen through Meruba Begadim will also bring a par. It's a Chiddush. Our Mishnah doesn't hold that way. So our Gemara is saying, must be that our Mishnah is not like Rav Meir. Rav Meir is of the opinion that even a Kohen who's Meruba Begadim would be able to bring this par. Our Mishnah doesn't hold that way. Which is, of course, the author of our Mishnah. My time of Rav Meir. Why does Rav Meir say this opinion that even a Kohen who's Meruba Begadim, why would he say that he brings a par? Says the Gemara, the Tanya. Rav Meir has a brisa that supports his shita. 2 lines from the bottom, the Tanya. Mashiach, when the Torah says that this Kohen is anointed, what does this mean? Ainli ela mashuach b'shem and amishcha. I only know about the Kohen who was anointed because of Shemen HaMishcha. How do I know, says the Gemara, and this is a random brisa, right? It doesn't say Rav Meir's name. How do I know the Meruba Begadim that he would also bring this animal? Minayin, Talmud Omar HaKohen HaMashiach. And says the Gemara, a little hard to understand exactly how we got Meruba Begadim from this, but there's an extra word here. It's HaKohen HaMashiach. So there's extra words, extra letters, and therefore, when it says Mashiach, we know that's talking about the Kohen who is Nimshach al Yedei oil. But how do we know about Meruba Begadim? Either from the Hey, from HaMashiach, or HaKohen, an extra word altogether. And therefore, says the Gemara, that's why Rav Meir is of the opinion, that's why Rav Meir holds that even a Kohen who was anointed only through Meruba Begadim is still shaykh by the par. Says the Gemara, what does that mean? If our Mishnah is not Rav Meir, therefore, b'mai ukimte kirabanan, must be that our Mishnah is like the Rabbanah, and that brings us to the top of Yud Beis, Amud Beis. Ema Seifa, if that's true, we have a problem because the Reisha is the Rabbanah, but as we'll soon see, the Seifa doesn't fit with the Rabbanah, the Seifa only fits with Rav Meir. How does that work? So says the Gemara, Ema Seifa, top of Yud Beis, Amud Beis. Ein bein Kohen mishamesh leKohen sha'avar, ela par Yom HaKippurim v'asir Seifa, asan the Rav Meir. The only difference between the Kohen mishamesh and the Kohen sha'avar is the par of Yom HaKippurim and the Korban Mincha. And this is the sheet of Rav Meir. How do we know that this is the sheet of Rav Meir? So says the Gemara, Tanya. Let's say that a Kohen, we thought he had a mum. So we pulled him out of the rotation. Rebbe Shlita, I know you're the Kohen, I know you're doing the Avoda. You have a tear on your lip. Something's wrong with you. So we need to investigate. Go into the doctor's office. We're going to check you out. That's what the Gemara says. So if he was Irabub Sul Bekoin, Gadol, and Ve'avar, Uminu Koin Acher Tachtov, and then the substitute comes in, Harishon Choser Lavodaso, and then what they thought was a mum was not a mum. It was just some lunch on his lip. They thought it was a cut. It wasn't a cut. It was a little bit of food. They thought he was a mum. In the meantime, they got the substitute. Then they clarified that there's pashat nothing wrong with this guy. He has no mum. So Harishon, now that he's back in the saddle, Choser Lavodaso. He goes back into, I got it. He goes back into his regular avoda. So Kohen number 1, the original Kohen is back doing his job. Sheni's out. He's down for the count. V'asheni, kol mitzvahs kahuna alav divrei Reb Meir. We're going to see that in a little bit. Exactly right. He can't go back down because of malin b'kodesh ve'ein moridin. He can't become a regular Kohen Hedjud anymore because he's already been elevated. Rabbi Yossi in the brackets, 7 lines down. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Rishon chozer lavodaso. V'sheni eno roy lo lekohen gadol v'lo lekohen hedyot. No, he's out. He can't do any more avoda. Amar Rabbi Yossi, Ma'isa b'Yosef ben Elim, mitzipori, she'ira bo psul b'kohen gadol, v'avar uminu acher tachtav in the parentheses, v'lo inichu echa v'kohanim, lios lo kohen gadol v'lo kohen hedyot. Why was he not allowed to do either of these roles? Zugs the Gemara, kohen gadol mishum eva. He's gonna bring about jealousy. Oh, you're so chashuv. You've been the Kohen Gadol for 10 minutes. That's not good. And Kohen Hedjot Mishum, like Stan pointed out, Malam Kodesh ve'ein Morida. And the problem is that this shows us that the Seifa of our Mishnah, which teaches us that the only difference between the Kohen Mishamish and the Kohen Sha'avar is the par, that shows us that we hold like Rav Meir, because if you look at the beginning of the Bryce on the 5th line, it said, V'asheni kol mitzvos kuna alav David Rav Meir. That's our Mishnah. All the mitzvos, you just can't bring the par, but all the mitzvos are there. That's Rav Meir. So therefore, we have a problem, which is Reisha is Rabbanan. Because remember, we said our Mishnah is not like Rav Meir in the first din. The Seifa, Rav Meir. So now we have a problem. We don't like when Mishnayos, when Bryces are broken into two different Amor and two different Tanaim. Yet here it seems to be that way. So how do we view this seeming internal contradiction within our Mishnah, that the Reish of our Mishnah is the Rabbanan and the Seif of our Mishnah is Rav Meir? So says the Gemara, Amar of Chizda, absolutely, sometimes it happens that the Reish is one person, the Seif is another. Yes, you're correct. Reish Rabbanan, the Seif Rav Meir. Rav Yosef doesn't like this. Rav Yosef Amar, really, actually, it's the Shita of Rebbe. And Rebbe has a blended Shita. Rebbe holds in some cases like the Rabbanan and in some cases like Rav Meir. So instead of saying that the Mishnah is a shtickle Rav Meir and a shtickle Chachamim, Rebbe holds that way, and he's one individual. Our Mishnah is like Rebbe, which is a beautiful answer. The Nasiv Le'a Liba de Tanai. He holds like these respective Tanaim in their own ways. He holds like the Chachamim, not like Rav Meir that we saw, that a Kohen HaMeshamesh, not a Kohen HaMeshamesh, that the Kohen Meruba Begadim is different than the Kohen that was Nibshach, and he holds like like the Seifa, which is Rav Meir. And Rava gives another answer, and it's not Rebbe, but Rava Amar really Rav Shimon, he who holds this way. He only agrees with Rav Meir in certain circumstances. Similar answer to Rebbe. This is a long brisa, which will hopefully help us to understand our Mishnah within the lens of Rava's answer. Let's review quickly the question and answer. The Gemara is bothered by the fact that the Reisha is Rav Meir, and that the Reisha is the Chachamim, and the Seif is Rav Meir. So the Gemara says, Rava says, third answer, no, it's all Reb Shimon. Let's see how this plays out. The Tanya, we're a third of the way down in Yud Beis and Mid Beis. Dvarim sheben Kohen Gadol leKohen Hedyot. There are things that are different between a Kohen Gadol, the highest level, and a Kohen Hedyot. Eluhem, this is them. Para Baal Kol HaMitzvos Par Yom HaKippurim Asir Saifa. The par when he Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibur, that's Par Haba Kol HaMitzvos. Upar Yom HaKippurim, that's his personal korban that he brings. Kohen Gadol can bring it. Asir Saifa, the korban mincha, the Kohen Gadol can bring it. Velo Poreya Velo Forem. The Kohen Gadol is not allowed to grow out his hair when he's in Avelus, and he's also not allowed to tear his clothes when he's in Avelus. But the Kohen Gadol does actually tear from the bottom. We'll see a machlokas Rav and Shmuel about this in the Gemara. And a regular Kohen is allowed to do this lamala higher up on the garment. We'll soon see that means by like the collar. Their garments, let's say, imagine they're wearing a tunic. So their collars were like a thicker thread to make sure that it wouldn't unravel. That's what we're potentially talking about, as we'll see in the Gemara. He's not allowed to become tameh to his relatives, meaning both of them are not allowed to do that. He can only marry basula, asr balmana, cannot marry an almana. We spoke about this yesterday, that an almana was be'erusin. Pasha, he can't marry an almana if she slept with someone. That's obvious because he's already muzharan basula. What must we be talking about? A woman, even by erusin, her husband, she got engaged, and then she's an almana. Her husband died, but they never lived together. So because that's the case, Zog's the Gemara, that he's asr be'almana. Umachzer sarotzech, if he dies, says the Gemara, he empties out all the arei miklat from all the murderers who killed B'shogeg. Umakriv onen, he brings a korban even be'aninos. Aninos, of course, is the period of time that's in between death and burial of an immediate family member. It is an extremely odd time. I've been there. You don't put on tefillin, you don't bench, you don't make brachos. It's super weird. And you're so well oiled from being from, you have to like really discipline yourself. It's so weird going into Shkia and not putting on tefillin on purpose. It's super weird. Nevertheless, the Kohen can be makriv be'aninus. The eno ochel ve'eno cholek. But when he does eat, when he does bring a korban, not an olah, but a chatas, he's not allowed to eat from that korban. He's not allowed to eat as an onin. He's not allowed to do that. He also can't take a portion. Makriv chelek barosh. He gets to sacrifice the first part. The notel chelek barosh. He also gets to take the first part. Umeshamish b'shmona kelim. He's allowed to wear all of the shmona begadim. V'cholavod asyom kippurim ena kshera elabo. This kohen gadol is the man. Upater al tumas mikdash v'kadashav. This is a sugya we learned a while back, that if he makes a mistake and comes into the base of mikdash tameh, he's going to be pater. We're not going to go into that now. V'chula noagid b'merum begadim. And most of these halachos apply to even the meruba begadim. Remember our distinction. There's a difference between a kohen gadol who is nimshach with oil and a kohen who is nimshach only with meruba begadim. So says the Gemara, first of the very long lines halfway down in your Beis Amud Beis, that when we talk about the kohen who's a meruba begadim, he only became a kohen gadol when he was meruba begadim. All of the halachos that we learned above apply. Chutz, except for mipar hamevi al kol hamitzvos, except for the par helam davar shel tzibur. This is code word. That this is where somebody made a mistake because of him. He is not the same. The meruma begadim cannot bring that korban. V'chula nohagin b'mashiach sha'avar. All of these halachos also apply with the Mashiach sha'avar. Remember our Kohen Gadol substitute. Remember, Kohen Gadol proper, we thought he had a tear on his lip, and that's a psul. They put in the sub. So what's the halachos by the sub? We said all these halachos apply by the Mashiach sha'avar, chutz mipar yom kippur v'asir seifa, except for the halachos of par on Yom Kippur, the par that the Kohen Gadol would bring to be mechaper himself and on his family and on the other kohanim, and for the korban mincha that he would have brought as well. That also doesn't apply to the Mashiach sha'avar. What about the Mashiach b'milchama? Says the Gemara, v'chulan ein noagin b'Mashiach milchama. All of the halachos don't apply. This is the exact opposite. We're starting from the negative. The other ones were in the positive, right? If you look at the last halacha, we said all of these are noheg except for X. Here we're saying none of them are noheg except for a total flip of the script with one word. V'chulan ein noagin b'Mashiach milchama. Let's just call this out from 30,000 feet. The Mashiach milchama is not really comparable to the Kohen Gadol. He's way different than the Kohen Gadol.
He might end up doing nothing his entire life. There's no Malchama.
He doesn't do anything.
And even if there is, he's going out and saying a couple of...
That's right. He's going to be mechazek the people. Right. We learned about this in Sota, and I think elsewhere as well. I didn't know it was in Sota, actually. I thought it was somewhere else. But either way, you just finished it, so you know it's there. So the Gemara says over here, V'chulan ein noagin b'Mashiach milchama. All the halachos that apply by Kohen Gadol do not apply by the Mashiach milchama. Chutz except for the 5 things that are mentioned in the parsha. What are the 5 things that, in fact, do apply by the Mashiach Milchama? Says the Gemara, lo poreya v'lo forem, that if he's in Avelus, he doesn't grow his hair and he doesn't do kriya. He's not allowed to become tamei to his immediate relatives. He's taka, needs to avoid, be careful who he marries. The Asr Ba'almana, same as the other. And when he dies too, this is a big kula. That's a good thing. Again, we don't want anyone to die. But when and if he dies, he'll patra. They clear out the Arei Miklat. So you have Kohen Gadol, Kohen Sha'avar, and even the Mashiach Milchama, he will clean out the whole room. However, wait, hold on. The Mashiach Milchama is too far down the totem pole to clear out the Arei Miklat. That is definitely not true. V'hai mimai de Reb Shimon. Says the Gemara, givaldik that you want that Rav. Remember what we're trying to answer. The Reishas Chachamim, the Seifa is Rav Meir. We don't want that. So we gave a couple of answers. We gave the answer of Rav Chizda. We gave the answer of Rav Yosef. We're trying now to declare the answer of Rav. Rav wanted to say it's all Reb Shimon. But this Brisa, much as it indicates a good answer for our case, but how do you know it's Reb Shimon? It doesn't say his name. So it says the Gemara, 2/3 of the way down, 4 lines into the wide lines. V'hai mimai de Reb Shimon, Amar Rav Papa. He says, Man shomas leida Amar Pater al tumas mikdash v'kadashav. You got to know Shas. Says the Gemara, who is the one who holds that if a person, a Kohen Gadol, goes into the base of Mikdash Tameh, that he'll be pater on Tumas Mikdash v'Kadashav. He'll be pater for anything that happens with the Kalim. So says the Gemara, Reb Shimon. And that's answer number 3 to our sugya, asked and answered. We tried to figure out why is the ratio of our mission like the Chachamim and the Seifa like Rav Meir, and we gave a few answers to that. Very good. The first answer was, yes, the ratio is Rav Meir, the ratio is the Chachamim and the Seifa is Rav Meir. The second answer is that's taka how Rebbe holds. It's only one person. It's not the 2 that you're saying. And the third is Reb Shimon, which is Rav's answer. We had said, Chutz mihei dvar, remember we were talking about the Kohen who was Mashuach Milchama, that this Kohen had nothing like the Kohen Gadol except for 5 things. Let's analyze that. We're at the 2 dots, 2/3 of the way down, 5 lines into the wide lines. How do we know this? We have a brisa. So we see he's included with some of the halachos in this pasuk. This applies even to a Kohen who only became a Kohen Gadol through putting on the Kohen vestments of the 8 garments. Al kulan hu omer rosho lifra v'gadav lo yifrom. V'al kol nefashos mez lo yavo. What do we see? That even by the Mashuach Milchama, it applies by all of them that we have these guidelines, that we have these rules that they can't cut their hair, they can't do kriya, they're not allowed to become tamei. So we see the Mashuach Milchama has the very same halachos as the Kohen Sha'avar and any other Kohen Gadol, Kohen Ruba Begadim, and Pashat, obviously, the Kohen who's Mashuach. Yacho, Yehu, Kulan, Makrivin, Onanim. Maybe we should say that all of these Kohanim in this brisa should be able to bring a korban when they're an onen. Says the Gemara, no. Talmud Omar, Hinezer Shem and Mishchas Elo Kavalav, Alav Velo Al Chavero. Only the Mashuach Milchama is allowed to bring a korban when he is be'aninus. Because of the pasuk says, lo. It says Alav Velo Al Chavero. That's a taich. We wouldn't have known that. We would have thought that everyone would have been included. That's why above the brisa said there's only hey dvarim that the Mashuach Milchama is similar to the Kohen Gadol. It's not be'aninus. Why? Allah v'lo al chavero. So only the Kohen who's Mashuach b'shemen is able to bring a korban be'aninus. Now that we know that the Torah distinguished away from the Mashuach Milchama, yachal lo yehei metzuva ala basula. Says the Gemara, this is a jump. We'd have to see the Rishonim as to why this is true. Once we know that the Mashuach Milchama doesn't have the same halachos as Aninus, as the Kohen Gadol who was Mashuach B'Shemen, maybe we should say he could marry even a Be'ula. Mechatesi, he should be shaykh to the halachos of marrying only a Basula. Talmud Lomar, Vihu. That's what the pasuk says. Vihu, and him. So that's an extra word. The vav, is it the who? So you got to see the Rishonim here, that even the Kohen HaMashuach Milchama, that Kohen also has to marry a Basula. He's not allowed to marry a Be'ula. Ketanoi. This, in fact, is connected to a machlok. As Tanoi says the Gemara, "V'hu yisha b'psula ha'yikach achar shachilek ha'kasuv riba tivi Rabbi Shmuel." You're right. The Torah already separated the Mashuach Milchama with the drash of Allah v'lo al chavero. However, there's a riboy in the pasuk of V'hu, and therefore riba, he's now included in the prohibition of marrying a be'ula. He has to marry a basula. Rabbi Akiva Omer Einli Ela. I only know this is true about a Kohen Gadol who's pulled because he saw Keri. I don't know it about others. What about Machmas Mumin Minayin? Maybe the halachos are different by a basula. Maybe he's not. Maybe there's no din for him to marry a basula if, in fact, he is puzzled because of a mum. This Kohen Gadol. Talmud Omar V'hu. Again, an inclusive language that all of them have a restriction. They must all marry a woman who is a basula. Bamine Rava Mei Rav Nachman Mashiach Shenitz Dareya. Let's say you have a Kohen Mashuach who gets leprosy, he gets saras, mahu be'almana. And we don't know all the links as to why we're assuming there's a link between these two things. But once you're done being a Kohen Gadol, you're not shaykh to this job anymore. Now can you marry an almana? Once you're reduced from that pedestal of being a Kohen Gadol, maybe all the halachos change. And the Gemara gives a beautiful chakira. Do we say mid chadachi? Once you become a Kohen Gadol, you're done. You are never allowed to marry an almana anymore. You have to marry a basula, all the halachos of who you marry. Or do we say, no, just in the moment when you're a shaykh Kohen Gadol, when you're kosher, miftar pater. But, okay, if you beget saras, I don't know who's going to want to marry you if you have leprosy, but at least you can marry, you'll marry another person with leprosy. And maybe she's going to be an almana, maybe that should be mutter. So this was the question that Rava asked Rav Nachman. Rava, 4th century, Rav Nachman, 3rd century. He asked his Rebbe, Lo hava biyadeh. Rav Nachman didn't know the answer. And Zimnin hava yasvei Rav Papa v'kami boile. This question was then later posed to Rav Papa.
But possibly, in other words, once the saras is over, he could return back to being a Kohen Gadol.
We're not talking about that.
No,
that's my son.
But I'm saying with the reality is, he's going to end up being a Kohen Gadol. There's a very good chance he could be Kohen Gadol again. So, like, how can we? What's the havminess of it should be allowed? I understand in this period
because he's not on the pedestal now.
But
you are not.
He's heading back there though.
There's a link. If you're able to be a Kohen Gadol right now, you're not allowed to marry an almana, and you have to marry a basula. But right now you have tsaras. Right now you have a mum. Right now you have keri.
You know what I'm saying? It's a temporary.
100%. You're asking, does this?
Still,
You're in the dugout. You're in the dugout. You got a jersey
is
on.
there such a thing as retiring from that position altogether, or is it only disabled and that's bad?
I think you do it until you die.
Right.
Yeah.
So he's always the Kohen.
Right.
Yep.
I
hear-
saying that maybe.
I hear what you're asking, but the Gemara's Havamina, it doesn't factor that in. The Gemara seems to say a person who has tzaras, you can heal. Go out michutz lamachana, shiva yama, whatever it is. Yeah, you push it, you can heal. So the Gemara seems to not want to factor that in. And what that implies is that even when you're on the what's called the DL, I'm so proud of myself. I know nothing about sports. So even when you're injured, or I should say only when you're injured, then we say you're not a Kohen Gadol right now. So do we say mincha dachi? It doesn't matter if you're injured right now. You're a Kohen Gadol. You're begeder Kohen Gadol. You can never marry anyone who's an almana. Or no, right now you're in a reduced status. You're a non-Kohen Gadol. You're a Kohen Hedjot. Is that true?
Right.
Do you become a Kohen Hedjot? I don't know.
Like a Melech's not going back in, right? Once he's off his kingship,
Right.
right? He's done. He cannot. I believe.
I don't know.
He can't go back.
I don't
He can
know.
go back. It's the same.
100% he can go back. We saw that in the Gemara.
Right.
Yeah.
When would a king not be a king? If he's
No, I'm saying
Still
once he's done.
Only if he gives it to a child. Once there's a new king.
he could give it to a new king while he's still alive.
I thought it's happening. No. Maybe not.
Why would you say?
You're saying because there isn't really what to disqualify.
Right. What are the psulim of being a king?
Yeah.
Lo yodea.
Okay.
Lo yodea.
I heard that.
Anyways, we need the answer to the question. Do we say mincha dachi or do we say miftar patar? Do we say that the Kohen Gadol, when he has tzoras, that he's just, it doesn't matter what you have. You're a Kohen Gadol, but etzem, you have to marry a basula. You cannot marry an almana. Oh no, do we say miftar patar? In this moment, you're not a Kohen Gadol. You can marry whoever you want. Then what happens when you become a Kohen Gadol? You have to divorce your wife. Okay, Rishonim. So Amarle Rav Huna Breda Rav Nachman. Rav Huna was the son of Rav Nachman. Let's get, that means that Rav Huna and Rava were peers. Okay. So Rav Huna, he says to his Tati, I have an answer. Tanina, we learn this. Ainli ela sha'avar machmas kerio. Avar machmas mumen minayin. Minayin, that even if it's avar machmas mumen, that you're going to be chayiv to marry a basula. How do we know that? Shutam lo marvahu. So what does that tell you? That was kind of like your instinct. Once you're Kohen Gadol, you're Kohen Gadol. You're done. Kam nashke bereshav yuevle barate. He was so happy that he gave his daughter to him. And I don't even know who gave who to what. I'm a little confused about who gave who to what, because it was his own son. It said Beret. No, it was his son. Okay. That brings us to a new Mishnah 3-4. So the way down your Bez and Bez, let's continue. Kohen Gadol, pore milamata ve'ahedyot milamala. A Kohen Gadol Taka does do Kriya, but he does it from the bottom. One, just to foreshadow, is it the bottom of the garment, or is it below the kera of the seam at the neck? We don't know. Machlokes, we'll see. Kohen Gadol makriv onein v'lo ochel. Kohen Gadol is able to be makriv when he's an onein, but he's not allowed to eat the food. The hedyot, if you have a Kohen hedyot, lo makriv v'lo ochel. A hedyot who's be'aninus, he's done for. He's not allowed to do anything be'aninus. That brings us to an open Gemara. Omar Rav, we have a machlokes samurai. Lamata mamish. When we say in the Mishnah, just look back at the Mishnah, then Kohen Gadol is porei milamata behedjod milamala. What does it mean that he's porei milamata? Lamata mamish, from the bottom of the garment. Let's say I'm wearing a suit. The bottom, this part. This is where he would tear from. By the way, halacha l'maisa, doctors and hospitals who see a lot of death. So some of the poskim write they need to do a little kera in the bottom of their shirt, not where you do for a non-parent family member on the right side, and not by where you tear for a parent, which is always on the left side, but they would make a little kera. Let's say people who work, like Dr. Zer, Ledugma, he's doing trauma surgery. People die. So you just got to tear. People in hospice, you got to tear. So some poskim hold that.
Sorry.
No, it's good. Yeah,
No, he's not feeling well.
right. That's horrible. That's horrible.
He's had a rough morning.
Rough morning. Beautiful. So that's the shita. So that's the shita of Rav. Lamata mamish. And lamala is lamala mamish. That's what the Gemara says. Ushmuel lamar lamata mikame safa. Shmuel says, no, I'm only talking about below the line of the collar. and lamala lamama lamala mekame safa. That's tearing through the neck, tearing through the actual collar line. The zeb savar, both are talking about the collar. Both parts of this are talking about the collar. That is the shita of Shmuel. Meisvei akasha and the shita of Shmuel. So says the Gemara as follows: Al kol hamesim kulan. The Brisa says on anyone who dies, rata mavdil kame safa shalom. If you want, you can tear by your safa, by your collar. Ratzu eno mavdil kame safa shalom, or you could not, which is against Shmuel. Shmuel says you have to do it there. Al aviv al imo mavdil. Pashut that when it comes to a parent, you have to be mavdil, nothing to talk about. But kevan de be'alma have kera karikan begadav lo yifrom. It should be that the Kohen Gadol is not allowed to tear in another place. So that's problematic. So how do we understand Shmuel? So says the Gemara, we're 10 lines from the bottom. Shmuel Rabbi Yehuda Svirale. Shmuel is of the opinion like Rabbi Yehuda. This is interesting because Rabbi Yehuda must be which Rabbi Yehuda is it? So it says the Gemara Svirale to Amar Kol Keresh Eino Mabdil Safa Shalo Eino Ela Keresh Shel Tiflus. He says if you're not tearing through the collar line, that's a zero. Umi Islay the Rabbi Yehuda Kriya B'Kohen Gadol. Does Rabbi Yehuda hold that there even is a Kriya B'Kohen Gadol? V'Tanya, we have a brisa. What does the brisa say? Ilu ne'emar rosh in the singular. Rosh lo yifra uveged lo yifrom. Hayisyomer b'rosh uveged shel sota kasum medaber. In the singular, we would have thought that we were talking about a sota, but that's not what it says. That's what it says. Talmud Omar, what do we say? Es rosho lo yifra uvgadav lo yifrom. She'enu b'frio frima kolikar. Him, not talking about a sota. Who's the him? A Kohen Gadol. Therefore, no tearing at all. So that means that Rabbi Yehuda is of the opinion that there is no kriya at all. And let's finish the brisa, and then we'll have our question. Rabbi Shmuel Omer, Eino porim kederach shebnei adam formin, ela hu lamata v'hedyon lamata. You're right that in general they don't tear, but the Kohen Gadol just tears differently. So this first shita of Rabbi Yehuda is a kasha because Rabbi Yehuda seems to not allow any tearing whatsoever. Says the Gemara, Shmuel savar leik Rabbi Yehuda bechado palag lebechado. He disagrees with certain things that he says, not everything that he says. That brings us to a new mission on the bottom of Yud Beis and Yud Beis. Let us keep going. I would love to stop here, but we got to finish this Masechta tomorrow. So here we go. This is a beautiful halachic mishnah that we should hold on to because at the end of the day, we deal with Tadirus all the time. What do we put on first? Talis or Tefillin? Talis. Why? Tadir b'shenu tadir kodem. 7 days a week. Kol tadir mechaveru kodem eschaver. You have two things hitting your plate at the same time. Whatever is tadir is the one that takes precedence. Whatever is more holy than the other thing that you're doing, that's also kodem eschaver. So let's talk about an example. Para Mashiach, the par that is brought by a Kohen, upar ha'eda omdin, which is the par helam davar shel tzibor. Par Mashiach kodem lepar ha'eda b'chol ma'aseh. The par Mashiach is more important on both fronts. So says the Gemara. The Gemara opens to learn the principle of tadir b'shenu tadir tadir kodem. Where do we get this from? We know on immediately 4 lines from the bottom. Says the Gemara as follows: Amar Abaye, do Amar Kra, milavado las haboker asher lo las hatamid. Michti, let's analyze this. Sibo las haboker. You already told me about the korban that needs to be brought in the morning. Olas hatamid lamali. Why do I need the language of olas tamid? Says the Gemara, hachi kamar rachmana kol de tedira kadma. We have the word tamid, olas tamid, kol she tedira kadma, which teaches us that we have this precedence over something that's more common when it's up against something that is less common. This to be true, the Tana de Rabbi Shmuel, that when we are talking about a Kohen, my brother-in-law Yosef's Kohen, you're a Kohen. Whenever we're around, we try to be mechabed kohanim. Says the Gemara, l'chol davar shebekdusha. We always give a person who has more built-in kedusha or a mitzvah that has more built-in kedusha. They always get precedence. Liftoach rishon, he gets to make a blessing first. We give him to eat first. Levarach rishon, v'lipol mana yafa rishon. The Kohen's at my table. I should feed him first. So says the Gemara, top of Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. We're going to try and get to the middle Mishnah, and then we'll stop. Par Kohen Mashuach upar Eda. What do we do? Our Mishnah says that if you have the Par Kohen Mashuach and the Par Eda, if you have a Par Mashiach and the Par Elam Davar Shel Tzibor, Par Mashiach comes first. How do you know? Not immediately that the Par Mashiach comes first. It's on a Rabbanon. The Sarafo so kasher Saraf is a Par Harishon. Matamalo Maharishon. Shehei Rishon Kodem LePar Ha'eda B'chol Ma'aso. That we know that the Rishon has to precede the Par Ha'eda. The Par Mashiach precedes the Par Elam Davar Shel Tzibor. Tanu Rabbanan, 4 lines down on Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. Par Kohen Mashiach uPar Ha'eda Omdin. We've got two things happening at the same time. We've got the Par Mashiach and the Par Ha'eda Omdin. The Brisa says this was our case. This was our Mishnah. The problem is, what do we see in our Mishnah? Par Kohen Mashiach Kodem Le Par Ha'eda B'chol Ma'asav. And here we have an addition. There's a svara, same halacha, but we have a svara. Hoel Mashiach mechaper ve'eda miskaperes, because the Par Mashiach is mechaper on the family, and because the Par Helam Davar Shel Tzibur is going to be mechaper on Klal Yisrael. Din hu shiyakim ha mechaper lemiskaper. It makes more sense to bring the korban that gives me kapara before I give the one that gives you kapara. It's like a shtickle chayecha kodmin l'chayecha vercha. I have to worry about myself, says the Kohen. Avi's in the base of Mikdash and Mirz Hashem. Avi has to bring this Kohen. It's a Par Mashiach. He's got to bring it for himself and for his family and for the other Kohanim. So which one comes first? You come first. You bring yours first. It makes more sense that the Michaper should go first because he's Miskaper. I negotiate with HaKadosh Baruch Hu like this all the time. Look, I'm trying to help your children. Help my children. I do it all the time in davening. A twist of the arm, a little zetz. I'm doing everything I can to help you. You need to help me. Good partner. The same, similarly, says the Gemara 8 lines down. Period. Okay, that's what the Gemara says. So that's how we see our raya. The v'chein is another raya that v'chaper ba'ado v'ad beso. That's first. That's Par Mashiach, and only then do we say v'ad kol Kal Yisrael. Beautiful. Next case, Paralam davar shel tzibor kodem lepar shel avodas kochavim. If I have the par helam davar shel tzibor, that becomes before, that's brought before a par that needs to be brought for avodas kochavim, my time, because hai chatas v'hai ola, and the chatas has to come first. So how do we know this? Vitanya, vikriv es asher lechatos rishona. Chatas comes first. It says the Gemara, ma tamalomar im lelamed shetehei chatas rishona. If you want to say that this pasuk means to teach us that a chatos goes first, but we already have a pasuk talking about the ola being second. I don't need a pasuk to tell me that the chatos is first. I already know. This extra pasuk is a binyan av to teach me that what? Whenever we have a chatos and an ola being brought together, the chatos comes first, and it's a binyan av. It applies throughout halacha. The Kai Malan, this is true, and this is shocking. First of the long lines. The afilu chatas ha'of kodemes le'olas be'ema. A chatas has to come first, even if the chatas you're bringing is a bird. It's an oaf. Chatas trumps. Chatas is always first. We are carnivores, and we would put in hierarchy, meat is better than chicken. 100% right. We don't care. The brand of chatas has to go first. The korban profile of chatas always goes first, even an oaf over an olas behema. First long line. What about par avodas kochavim? Kodem l'seir avodas kochavim. The par goes before the seir. Both about avodas kochavim. Why? Amai hai chatas v'hai ola. Because we have it that one is a chatas and one is an ola. Amri b'ma'arava mishmei Rava bar Mori chatas avodas kochavim chaseira aleph. The avodas kochavim one does go second here. Even though the seir of avodas kochavim is a chatas. Why do we break the rule? Because the Torah told us to break the rule. Why? Because the chatas of avodas kochavim is chaseira aleph. The pasuk says the chatas without an aleph ksiv. It's not a regular chatas. The lack of aleph in seir of avodas kochavim teaches us that even though we have a binyan av, that a chatas comes first, even if it's an oaf, so what? Doesn't matter. We always do chatas first, except where the aleph is missing by the seir of avodas kochavim, and then that chatas goes second. Rava Amar, we have another Mari Malcolm as to why we reverse things. Kamishpat, Ksibei, not clear from the Gemara what this means, but basically this particular chatas is listed after the ola. That's if we were to look into the psukim, which we're not going to do now because we don't have time. When you look at the psukim by the seir of avodas kochavim, the chatas is listed second. B'manav shach, everyone agrees to the conclusion. If you have to bring a par, what was the case? You have a par of avodas kochavim or a seir of avodas kochavim. So then the ola comes first in that case because chatas is missing an aleph, or because the word chatas was brought later. Seir avodas kochavim kodol seir nasi. If you have the seir avodas kochavim, that's before the seir of a nasi. My timer. Why is that? Hay tzibur v'hay yochid. Good, very good. But those are both seirim. Those are both chatas. But one's tzibur and one is yochid. Seir nasi kodem l'seir yachid. My timer. Hai melech v'hai hedyot. Of course, the king is going to go before a hedyot. Seiras yachid kodemas lekivsas yachid. A seir of a yachid, a chatas, is brought before the kivsa of a yachid. Tanya says the Gemara, wait 1 second. Kivsas yachid kodemas seiras yachid. I have a brisa that says the exact opposite. Zogs the Gemara. Amar Rabbi, you're right. Absolutely. Tanoim. Party lines. Let's see what they are. Mar savar seira adifa. One says the seir is better than the keves, than the kivsa. Shekain nisrapsa eitzel avodas kochavim biyachid. Because there's a chiddush that can only that they can only bring this animal by the avodas kochavim. Umar savar no kivsa adifa. The keves is better than the seira. Shekain nisrapsa be'aliyah, because we actually add in the tail of that animal by korbanos, which we don't by others. Last din for the day. Omer kodem lekeves habaimo. The omer precedes the keves that's brought with it. The shtei alechem are kodmen lekvasim habaim imahim. The breads go before the animals that are brought with the kvasim. Zaklal. Davar haba begin liyom kodem ledavar haba begin lechem. Things that are tied to the day, they're part of the cadence of the day. Those go first, as opposed to something that's tied to a secondary thing, such as the seirim, such as the shtei alechem. That's an external factor, and therefore the ones that are tied to the day go first. We'll stop right here at this Mishnah in the middle of Yud Gimel Amud Aleph. Wishing you all a beautiful night. Mazel tov to the glasses and the roses.